AITA for wanting to sue my adoptive mom. My name is Jalen. I'm 18 now, but most of my life has felt much older than that I left home a few months ago. I didn't tell anyone. I packed my work bag with what I could carry, slipped out after my shift ended, and didn't look back. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't leave a note. I knew if I tried, they'd find a way to stop me. I was adopted when I was 6. My younger brother, Devin, was 5. We were taken in by a couple who looked perfect from the outside. They had a neat house with trimmed hedges, Sunday dinners, and a well-worn Bible on the coffee table. They smiled for pictures and brought cookies to school events. At first, I thought I had finally landed in a home that was safe, but that illusion didn't last long. Things were okay until I turned 13. That's when the shift started. It was subtle at first. Extra chores, sharper tones, small comments that stung more than they should have. My adoptive mom, who I'll call Rachel, slowly started to expect more from me. Not just more help around the house, but more silence, more sacrifice, less of me. She started making me do Devin's homework. She said it was my job as the older brother to make sure he succeeded. If he had a project due, I had to finish mine early to complete his too. If he didn't want to read a book, I had to summarize it for him. If he failed a test, somehow, I got grounded. And when he got into trouble, which he often did, it was still my fault. When Devin shoved me or yelled, I was told I should have de-escalated. If I ever raised my voice, I was scolded for being aggressive. Once, he hit me with a remote and left a mark on my shoulder. I defended myself by pushing him off, and Rachel screamed at me for laying hands on her baby. She punished me in ways I didn't even know were allowed. I'd be forced to stand in a corner for hours, with no food until I finished writing sentences, over and over again. Some nights, I stood for so long that my knees felt numb. She said I needed to learn discipline, but it didn't feel like discipline. It felt like being erased. When I turned 14, things got worse. She became unpredictable. Some days, she was just quiet and cold. Other days, she'd laugh while pushing me onto the couch and mock me while I curled up in fear. She spit on me once. Another time, she hit me with the long extension from the vacuum cleaner. I didn't even see it coming. When I told her I was gender fluid, I had a flicker of hope she might surprise me with understanding. Instead, she laughed, called me names, mocked me in front of Devin, said I was a disappointment and possessed. She took my favorite hoodie, the one I wore when I felt most myself, and threw it in the trash. She blocked my friends. She canceled the art classes I loved, saying I didn't need those kinds of hobbies. I stopped drawing after that. She told me I looked like my biological father, a man I've never met. She called me ugly, fat, said I'd never be loved by anyone because I was too weird, too soft, too broken to at one point. I stopped eating. I just stopped. I didn't want to be seen, and eating made me feel real. I didn't want to feel real that she'd barge into the bathroom while I was showering and yell at me for locking the door. She made jokes about my body. I wasn't even safe in the one room with a lock. I started showering with the lights off. It felt safer in the dark at night. I'd cry into my pillow and wonder if the world would be better if I disappeared. I told her once that I felt depressed, that I couldn't sleep, that I was scared all the time. She just scoffed and said, "Everyone feels like that. You'll get over it." I didn't. She tried to destroy every relationship I formed. When I started dating someone who finally made me feel seen, she told me I didn't know what love was, that I should date someone she picked out. She even called my girlfriend's parents to try to end the relationship. She made me go to her church every Sunday, even though I told her it made me uncomfortable. When I asked to stop, she said that was Satan talking and grounded me for 2 weeks. Then, there was the money. I worked part-time from age 15. I saved every dollar I could. I wanted to go to college. I wanted a future. But when I left, I realized she kept over $4,000 I'd saved. I got about $2,100 back through my bank, but the rest, gone. She wouldn't even speak to me about it. She also kept my birth certificate, social security card, and medical insurance information. I had to miss a college health checkup because I didn't have my insurance papers. When I asked for them, she told me, "You don't deserve it," after running away. Even when school counselors reached out, after I told one that I didn't want to live anymore, she downplayed everything. She told them I was dramatic. At home, she screamed at me for embarrassing her. I'm safe now. I'm renting a small room with 2 other students. I eat when I'm hungry. I sleep with my door locked. No one yells, but I still feel the fear sometimes. I still jump when someone slams a cabinet too hard. I still double-check the lock 3 times before I can fall asleep. That I'm trying to rebuild my life. I'm trying to go to school. I'm trying to feel like I exist for myself, not just for other people's expectations. And yet, I can't stop thinking about what she did, about the money she took, the years she stripped from me, the names, the shame, the fear to here I am, asking the question that haunts me every night. AITA for wanting to sue the woman who adopted me and made my life a nightmare? Brace yourself, because the update took a turn nobody saw coming. After I shared my story, I started getting messages from people, some strangers, some old friends I hadn't heard from in years. A few of them told me they had gone through similar things. Others just offered quiet support. That meant more to me than I can explain, but one message stood out. It was from a former neighbor who used to live across the street from my adoptive parents. She said she remembered how Rachel treated me, how often I seemed nervous or withdrawn, how I never smiled like Devin did. She told me she had once considered reporting something but didn't feel she had enough proof. She said she regretted not doing more. That message stayed with me. It reminded me that I wasn't imagining what I went through. I really was seen. Even when I felt invisible, that I spent the next few weeks focused on college paperwork, working extra hours, and trying to rebuild a sense of routine. But that missing money, the $4,000, and my withheld documents still weighed on me, that I decided to try one last time to get my paperwork back without involving lawyers or the police. I sent Rachel a short, polite email. I told her I needed my birth certificate, social security card, and insurance paperwork. I didn't mention the money. I didn't accuse her of anything. I kept it brief. She didn't reply for 5 days. Then, unexpectedly, she emailed back. Come pick them up on Sunday. I'll leave them on the porch. Don't knock. That was it. No apology. No emotion. I went early that morning, just in case. There was a small padded envelope on the front step, just like she said. Inside were my documents. Everything I'd been asking for. It should have felt like a win, like freedom. But when I held those papers, all I felt was empty. Not because I didn't get justice. Not because I still had questions, but because it reminded me of how little I mattered to her. Even now, after everything, I was just someone she wanted gone, quietly, cleanly, with no fuss. That I walked away and didn't look back. Again, you are absolutely, unequivocally not the AITA. In fact, you're the furthest thing from it. You survived a psychological minefield disguised as a loving home. You endured manipulation, degradation, and targeted cruelty, then had the courage to escape, survive, and even try to rebuild without vengeance. That alone is heroic. Wanting to sue Rachel isn't petty. It's a rational response to years of sustained abuse, financial exploitation, and withheld legal documents that were yours by right. You're not seeking revenge. You're seeking accountability. You're asking for recognition that what happened to you wasn't okay. She didn't just fail you as a mother. She failed you as a human being. And the cherry on this dumpster fire Sunday? She knows what she did. That's why she wanted the handoff silent and sterile. No eye contact, no confrontation, no proof she ever had a conscience. You deserve healing, peace, and, frankly, reparations to oh no, you're not the AITA. Asterisk next story drops like a bomb. Zero chill, maximum shock. Story 2.
AITA for not letting my stepson move back in after what he said. When I married my husband Paul, I knew he came with a past. His wife had passed away for years before we met, leaving him to raise their son, Ethan, mostly on his own. Ethan was 15 when I entered their lives. I was 36, Paul 42, both of us craving stability after difficult chapters. I treated Ethan with steady kindness, not as a friend, not as a parent, never trying to replace his mother, but simply to make our home feel warm again. He never softened toward me, polite at times, but cold and distant. He never asked about my life, never confided in me, barely spoke unless Paul was present. I understood. He lost his mom young, and never pushed, hoping time would bring ease. When he went to college out of state, I saw glimpses of potential change during his visits, though he remained mostly withdrawn. This past spring, over dinner one night, he looked at me and said, "It must be strange living in someone else's role," then added that I wasn't really part of the family, just filling a seat until the past fades. Paul was stunned. I was speechless. I asked Ethan if he thought I didn't belong, and he muttered that I'd never be his real family. I left the table, shaken, and told Paul. That really hurt. Paul tried to excuse it, saying Ethan was still grieving, but after years of patient effort, I realized I was still nothing more than a placeholder. Ethan remained cold for the rest of his stay, and I didn't push. Months later, Paul told me Ethan's lease fell through, and he needed to move back in. I said, "Not unless he talks to me first." Paul thought I was demanding an apology, but I only wanted Ethan to look me in the eyes and treat me like a human being. Paul called me unreasonable, saying we should be his safety net, but I wasn't asking for love, just acknowledgement, kindness, a sign that he saw me. After days of arguing, I told Paul the first wouldn't live in a house where I was treated like a ghost. He said I was holding a grudge, but I said, it's not about punishing him. It's about protecting myself. Now Paul is silent. Ethan hasn't reached out, and the house feels heavier than ever, and I'm left wondering, AITA for saying no to someone who never saw me as real?
No joke, the update hit harder than a plot twist in a telenovela.
I told Paul that Ethan couldn't move back in unless we cleared the air, and since then, the tension in our home has been quiet but constant, like a kettle that never whistles but always stays warm. Paul hasn't said much, but his silence speaks volumes. Our dinner conversations have thinned. He doesn't ask about my day the same way, and I notice how he moves a little slower, speaks a little softer, like he's weighed down by something he can't name. At first, I wondered if I'd been too harsh, replaying the night of Ethan's comment over and over, trying to interpret it differently. Maybe it was awkward wording, maybe he didn't mean to sound cruel, maybe he was still grieving, even years after his mother's death. But then I remembered the way he looked at me when he said it, with that calm, distant expression, like I was furniture placed in the wrong room. I never told Paul everything I felt that night, that I cried quietly into my pillow not because I wanted Ethan to love me like a mother, but because I'd spent years carefully never overstepping, only to still feel like an intruder. I had made his favorite sides for dinner, stayed out of arguments unless invited in, bought him books I heard him mention, and left them on the table without a note, clapped proudly at his graduation as if I'd known him since birth, and none of it mattered, not enough to stop him from saying I was just a placeholder. So no, I don't think I was cruel for asking for a conversation before opening my door to him again. I think I was protecting the last shred of my dignity. Still, when Paul started coming home late and avoiding our shared shows, I knew something had to give. So I asked him gently if he thought I was wrong for needing Ethan to acknowledge what he said, and after a long pause, he admitted, "I don't think you're wrong. I think you're hurt, and I think I've been too quiet because I'm afraid to admit I'm hurt, too." That cracked something open, and the next morning, I got a message from Ethan. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time, tempted to ignore it, not out of anger, but fear of feeling invisible again. But I told him he could come by the next afternoon. When I told Paul later that night, he just nodded and said, "I hope it goes well." Ethan showed up right on time with no bags, just his keys and a strained expression. We sat in the living room. I offered tea he didn't drink, and he opened with, "I've been thinking about what I said." And in that moment, I knew it wouldn't be a surface apology. I waited, and eventually he explained that when his mom died, time froze for him, and though his dad tried to keep things together, he couldn't accept anything new, including me. When I asked if he thought I tried to replace her, he shook his head and said I had always been careful and considerate, and somehow that made it harder. His comment, he said, was really about him, not me, and his inability to accept change, even years later, came out cold and unfair. I told him honestly that it wasn't just what he said, but the years of quiet effort and being unseen that made it feel like a final verdict. He listened, nodded, eyes glassy, and said he wished he'd said this all years ago. Then he stood and surprised me by saying he wasn't there to ask for a place to stay. He'd figure that out, but he didn't want to leave things like that. He didn't hug me, and I didn't expect him to, but before leaving he turned and said, "Thank you for always being kind, even when I wasn't." That night, I told Paul everything, and he took my hand and said, "Thank you for standing your ground, and for giving him a chance when I wasn't sure he deserved it." The house still feels quiet, but it's a different kind of quiet now.
You are not the AITA. You are something rare, someone who leads with grace and firm boundaries, a combination most can't manage without sounding like a walking TED Talk in therapy boots. You didn't slam a door, you left it gently ajar with dignity, asking only for the barest shred of humanity before letting someone back into your shared life. You weren't cruel, didn't demand an apology parade with confetti and grand confessions. You just wanted not to feel like background noise in your own home, and that's not only valid, it's essential. Ethan had every right to grieve, but grief doesn't grant a lifetime pass to treat someone like wallpaper with a pulse, and the emotional labor you carried while never centering yourself, that was Olympic-level patience. As for Paul, someone needs to remind him that emotional neutrality, his attempt at being Switzerland, isn't noble when your partner's being quietly sidelined in her own life. So no, you're not just not the AITA. You're the MVP of maturity, the protector of peace, and a soft-spoken storm of self-respect. Next story drops like a bomb. Zero chill. Maximum shock. Story 3. AITA for not letting the one person my son trusts visit him. When I was 35, I learned I had a son. His name is Jordan, and he's 14 now that he came into my life unexpectedly. His mother and I had been in a short relationship years ago, but we lost touch. She never told me she was pregnant. I only found out when she passed away suddenly, and her sister reached out. She said Jordan had nowhere else to go. So I took him in.at the time. I had a wife, Leah, and a 12-year-old daughter named May. We had a quiet, organized life. Bringing Jordan into it that felt like dropping a stone into still water. Everything changed. Jordan didn't speak much when he arrived. He kept his eyes down. He avoided everyone. He didn't ask for anything, didn't answer questions unless you asked twice. And even then, it was a shrug or a nod. He spent most of his time in his room with the door closed that I tried to connect. We all did. Leah made his favorite meals. May offered to play games with him. I took time off work to help him settle in. But nothing seemed to matter. He wouldn't even talk to the therapist we found for him. Weeks turned into months. He was still withdrawn, still quiet. At family dinners, he'd eat quickly and excuse himself. At school, the counselor called to say he barely spoke and didn't engage with other students. It was like he'd built a wall around himself, and none of us could find a door. Out of worry, I asked my parents and siblings to spend time with him. Just something simple. Go for a walk, play cards, anything. But Jordan didn't talk to them either. And if he did, it was short and cold. One time, my mom asked how his day went, and he told her to stop pretending to care. That I can't say I blamed him. He had been through something terrible, but it hurt to see him reject every hand we offered. And then came the unexpected twist. My younger brother Mark came back to town. We hadn't spoken to him in years. The last time we saw him, he lost his temper at a family pool party. May had accidentally dropped his phone in the water. He slapped her across the face, right in front of everyone. Leah and I told him to leave, and we cut him off completely. We paid for his phone, but we couldn't forgive what he did. He never apologized. Now, somehow, Jordan had found him. I don't know how or when, but suddenly, Jordan was talking to Mark that he would sit with him for hours. They'd talk outside in the yard, sometimes even laugh. Jordan looked more alive around Mark than he ever had with us. The change was impossible to ignore. At first, I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was grateful. This was the first time Jordan seemed to be opening up to someone. But the other part of me was filled with dread. I couldn't trust Mark. I knew who he really was. I knew what he had done. Then my parents started inviting Mark to family dinners again. They said if he was helping Jordan, it was worth giving him another chance. Leah was furious. She told me she wouldn't allow Mark anywhere near May. And I agreed. So when Mark showed up one afternoon, asking if he could just talk to Jordan, I told him to leave. I stood at the front door and didn't let him in. Jordan was upstairs. He came down after Mark left. He looked out the window, then turned to me and said nothing, just stared. That night, everything came out. He slammed doors. He yelled that I didn't care about him. He said I was just pretending to be his father. That Mark was the only person who ever actually listened to him. And now I was taking that away too. He told me he hated me. I didn't say anything back. Not because I agreed, but because I didn't know how to respond without making it worse. Later, I sat outside on the porch, listening to the quiet. I thought about how we got here. Two strangers forced into a relationship by circumstance, both carrying pain the other couldn't fix. Jordan wasn't wrong to be angry, but I still couldn't bring myself to let Mark back in. Not after what he did. I know Jordan doesn't understand that. To him, I probably look like the enemy, but I'm not sure if protecting him from someone I know is dangerous makes me the bad guy, or just a father doing his best in an impossible situation. So, AITA, the update walked in like, let me ruin your peace real quick. He hasn't said much to me since. Not that he was talkative before, but now, it's like I'm invisible. He comes downstairs for meals, goes to school, comes home, and disappears into his room. He doesn't even look at me. I've tried writing notes, asking how school was, leaving small things outside his door, like snacks or a book I thought he might like. None of it has worked. May's been distant too. She's old enough to feel the tension, but young enough to not know what to do with it. I can see the worry in her face. She asked me once if Jordan hated her too. I told her no, but I wasn't sure I believed it myself. Then last week, something unexpected happened. Jordan's school called me. They said he had skipped his afternoon classes and no one knew where he was. My heart dropped. I called his phone. No answer. I checked every spot I could think of. Nothing. Finally, around 7 p.m., I got a call from my brother Mark. He said Jordan was at his place. I told him I was coming to pick him up. He said, maybe just let him stay the night. I refused. He didn't argue, but I could hear the frustration in his voice. When I got there, Jordan didn't even look surprised to see me. Just annoyed that we didn't speak on the drive home. He stared out the window the whole time. When we pulled into the driveway, I asked him quietly, do you want to talk? He said, you don't care what I say anyway. And then he walked inside. That night, I sat with Leah in the kitchen. We didn't talk much either. Just sat there, trying to figure out how to reach a kid who clearly didn't want to be reached. I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know if keeping Mark away is the right thing or just my pride getting in the way. You are not the AITA. You're a parent navigating a grief-stricken minefield while trying to protect your child from a man who once assaulted your daughter. That's not just responsible. That's baseline human decency wrapped in steel core. Parenting. Let's be real. Mark isn't a misunderstood antihero. He's an adult who physically harmed a child and never offered a shred of remorse. The fact that he's Jordan's emotional outlet doesn't erase his history. It complicates it. And trauma bonding? That's a thing. Not all connections are safe just because they feel comforting. Your son sees Mark as the only person who gets him, but he's a 14-year-old trying to survive seismic loss, not evaluate character references. You, on the other hand, have to be the firewall, even if it makes you the villain in his eyes. Could you have explained it better to Jordan? Maybe. But let's be real. No version of "he hurt your stepsister and never apologized" is going to land softly on a kid clinging to the only person who makes him feel seen. So no, you're not heartless. You're not cruel. You're not prideful. You're a dad, choosing safety over popularity, and that's exactly what he needs, even if he can't see it right now. Verdict: not the AITA. You're just stuck playing defense in a game no one trained you for. Asterisk, what happens next story is so unhinged, you might need to sit down. Story 4.
AITA for not texting my boyfriend back while I was struggling? I've been with Ryan for almost 8 months. We met through a mutual friend. Things moved fast, and we started talking every day. He made me laugh and feel seen. When he moved to a different city for work, we agreed to try long distance, which was fine at first with good morning messages, lunch check-ins, and late-night texts that helped me feel close despite the miles. But lately, I haven't felt like myself. Managing unpredictable bakery shifts that start at 5 a.m. and end late, combined with a heavy, constant fatigue that makes my whole body ache and even breathing hard, has drained me. I told Ryan I might not text as much because I was so run down. He said he understood, but I could tell it bothered him. He sent me 89 messages in 3 days, from daily updates to jokes and long paragraphs about missing me, which overwhelmed me instead of comforting me, making every phone buzz fill me with guilt because I lacked the energy for conversation. I realized I'd also slowly pulled away from my friends, missing birthdays and canceling plans, caught up in the special feeling of constant contact with Ryan that had become pressure. And when an old friend, Lena, texted, "Hey, I miss you. Everything okay?" It hit me harder than all of Ryan's messages combined, making me realize how much I'd disappeared from my own life. That night, I didn't respond to Ryan. I lacked the energy and didn't want to fake it, but I replied to Lena, and we talked for 2 hours about small things, which felt like finally taking a breath after holding it too long. The next morning, I told Ryan the truth. I wasn't mad or ignoring him out of spite, just needed space to rest, to feel like myself again, and to reconnect with people I'd shut out. He didn't take it well, calling me selfish and saying he always put effort into the relationship while I was throwing it away, insisting that if I cared, I'd push through exhaustion because he needed me regardless. I didn't argue. I said I couldn't give more than I had. Since then, he's been distant, replying shortly and slowly, which maybe is fair. Maybe he's allowed to be upset, but so am I. There were nights I cried in the dark, torn between wanting to be there for him and knowing I had to protect myself, recalling times I stayed up late just to send a quick reply when my head pounded and limbs felt heavy. The energy I gave was borrowed and overdue. I thought about how easy it is to lose yourself in someone else when everything else feels so hard, and how hard it is to say, I need a break. I don't know what will happen next. Maybe Ryan will come around, maybe he won't, but for now, I'm choosing to listen to myself first.
Forget everything you thought you knew. The update rewrote the whole story.
After I finally told Ryan how I was feeling, things changed in a way I hadn't quite expected. The flood of messages slowed to silence or very short replies, with the long paragraphs, jokes, and pictures disappearing, replaced by clipped words and quieter, more cautious phone calls that hinted at his hurt but never addressed it directly, building a wall between us that made me miss our old closeness and easy conversations. But I also knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay or texting. When I was exhausted and unwell, it was draining. Some nights, I'd lie in bed, phone in hand, wanting to reach out but afraid it would push him further away or make him angry, fearing that if I didn't respond, he might stop caring. After a long, tiring shift, I texted Leah, my coworker, and the one person I could be honest with, and told her everything, how sick and tired I was, how the messages felt heavy instead of comforting, how I was slipping away from Ryan in my old life, and how I hadn't talked to my friends in weeks. Leah listened and then said, sometimes people don't understand when you slow down because they're used to you moving fast. They don't mean to hurt you, but they don't know how to catch up. You have to give them time. Her words stayed with me, a simple truth I hadn't realized. Ryan was hurt because he thought I was pulling away, and I was pulling away because I was hurting. Neither of us knew how to say that without pushing the other apart. After that, I started doing small things for myself, taking walks in the quiet park near my apartment, rereading a favorite childhood book, calling Lena, my oldest friend, friend, even when I wasn't sure what to say. Talking to Lena felt like breathing again. No pressure, no expectations, just two people talking. Every day, I tried a little more patience with myself and a little more honesty with Ryan. I still don't know if we'll find our way back to the closeness we had before, but maybe we will, and maybe we won't.
You're definitely not the AITA. Sometimes life hits hard, and juggling exhaustion with emotional connection isn't a magic trick. It's a marathon. Ryan's flurry of messages? Well-intentioned, but overwhelming. Like being hit by a text tsunami when you're just trying to tread water. You didn't ghost out of spite. You retreated to recharge, which is the adult thing to do, not the always-on romantic stereotype. Plus, reconnecting with old friends is like rediscovering a comfy sweater you forgot you had. Ryan's feelings matter, sure, but your health and boundaries? Non-negotiable. If he's upset, that's on him to figure out, not your burden to carry while collapsing under fatigue. Bottom line, self-care isn't selfish. You paused, you reset. That's strength, not weakness. Oh yeah, not the AITA. You're just human, doing your best. Trust me, the next story is pure "did that really just happen" energy. Story 5. AITA for asking my girlfriend to help with living expenses after her layoff. I'm 30 years old, and for the most part, I've built a stable and comfortable life for myself. I work full-time as a systems analyst and live in a small but cozy apartment just outside the city. It's not fancy, but it's mine. I've always been the kind of person who budgets carefully and keeps things organized, especially when it comes to money. 2 years ago, I met Lila. She's 29, and we hit it off right away. We had similar values, a quiet way of enjoying life, and a shared love for books and hiking. Things moved slowly but steadily. After a year and a half of dating, we started talking seriously about the future. That's when she suggested moving in together. First, I hesitated. I've always liked my space, and I didn't want to ruin what we had by rushing. But she was thoughtful and kind, and I trusted her. She moved in about 9 months ago. Everything felt easy at first. We split groceries, shared chores, and kept things simple. Lila worked as a graphic designer for a mid-sized firm. She loved her job. She put in extra hours, stayed passionate, and brought that same energy home. But 3 months ago, everything changed. Her company went through a massive restructuring, and she was let go. No warning, just a 15-minute meeting and a 2-week notice. She was crushed. I still remember the night. She came home with tears in her eyes, holding the small cardboard box of her desk items. I held her while she cried and promised her things would be okay. I told her she didn't need to worry about rent or bills for a while. She needed time to recover, to breathe, to figure things out. The first few weeks were quiet. She mostly stayed in bed or watched TV. I didn't push her. I understood that losing your job is more than just about money. It can feel like losing your identity, too. I kept paying for everything without complaint. But as time went on, I started to feel strained. Groceries ran out faster. The electricity bill crept up. She was home all day, every day, using everything from morning until night. She streamed shows constantly, took long baths, cooked complicated meals that left the kitchen a mess, and ordered delivery often. Even when I had stocked the fridge, she applied to some jobs, but only in her field. She told me she didn't want to settle or take a step backwards. I understood her pride, but I also started feeling the weight of keeping everything afloat on my own. I never asked her for anything up front. But about 8 weeks after her layoff, I gently brought it up. I told her I loved her, and I wasn't trying to be harsh, but I needed her to contribute something. I even suggested she look for a part-time role in the meantime, something to just ease the pressure. She didn't take it well. She said I was treating her like a burden, that I didn't understand how hard it was for her. She said taking a job outside her field would set her back years, and that she thought I, of all people, would be more supportive. I didn't want to argue, so I backed off. Another few weeks passed, and nothing changed. I found myself getting frustrated over little things. The TV being left on all day, the heating bill rising, the groceries disappearing faster than I could replace them. I started to dread going home, which was something I never felt before. So finally, I sat down with her and calmly said that I needed her to at least help with basic expenses. Not rent, just food, utilities, and shared items. I told her $300 a month would help me a lot. I made it clear she could pay me back later if needed, but I couldn't keep covering everything alone. She went silent. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just got up and walked into the bedroom, closed the door, and stayed there the rest of the night. Since then, things have been distant. She's barely speaking to me. Meals are quiet. The warmth we once had feels like it's faded. I didn't bring this up to punish her. I wasn't trying to shame her or push her away. I just needed help. I needed balance. I still care about her deeply, but I feel like I've been left to carry everything on my own, emotionally and financially. Now I'm wondering, did I do the wrong thing? Was I too focused on the money and not enough on what she was going through? Or am I just expecting basic fairness in a relationship? I don't know anymore. All I know is this doesn't feel like the partnership we had in the beginning, and I don't know how to fix it. hold on to your socks, because the update just blew the roof off. It's been quiet in the apartment, not silent. There's still the hum of the refrigerator, the low buzz of the television in the evenings, and the occasional clinking of dishes when Lila cooks. She still plays music softly when she showers. Sometimes I hear her chuckle at something on her phone when she's lying on the couch. But between us, it's been different. Like something invisible has stretched thin between us, and neither of us knows how to fix it. We talk, but only the surface stuff. Did you eat today? Can you take the trash out? I'm going to the store. Do you want anything? It's polite, functional, but it's not us. Not the version of us that used to share everything. Not just what we were doing, but how we were feeling. The kind of check-ins that felt like breathing. Those moments have vanished, and I miss them more than I expected. Some nights I lie in bed and stare at the ceiling, listening to her breathing softly in the next room. I try to remember the last time we laughed together. The last time we sat on the couch and watched a movie just to enjoy each other's company. I try to remember the last time she touched my arm without pulling away. I try to remember the last time she looked at me and smiled like she meant it. And I can't. Not clearly. It's like those memories are covered in fog. The hardest part has been not knowing how to reach her. Anytime I bring up how I'm feeling, she seems to either shut down completely or brush it off. She'll say she's just tired or not in the mood to talk right now. I get it. I really do. I know she's been struggling since she lost her job. I know that her self-worth took a huge hit, but I can't keep pretending I'm okay. So a few days ago, I did something I haven't done in years. I wrote a letter, not an email, not a text, a real letter, pen on paper. I sat at the kitchen table with the light dimmed low and the house completely still. I wrote slowly, carefully, choosing each word like it mattered, because it did. I wasn't trying to guilt her or make her feel worse. I just needed her to know how lonely I've been feeling, even though she's right here beside me. In the letter, I told her that I missed her. I told her I still loved her, even though it didn't feel like she loved me back lately. I told her I wasn't angry, but I was hurting and confused. I told her I understood that she was going through something hard, something that I might not fully comprehend, but I still wanted to support her. I just needed to feel like she was trying, even in the smallest way, like we were still fighting together. I folded it carefully and left it on her nightstand while she was in the shower. Then I put on my shoes, grabbed my keys, and went for a walk. I didn't want to be there when she read it. I didn't want to see her cry, or worse, not cry at all. I just needed her to read it without interruptions, without tension in the air, without us watching each other's reactions. When I got back, the letter was gone, but she didn't say anything. We went to bed that night like normal. No mention of the paper, no shift in tone, just the usual good night, followed by the sound of her scrolling quietly in the dark. I turned away and tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't settle. I thought maybe I had made things worse. But the next morning, something small was different. The dishes had been done, not just rinsed and stacked, actually done, dried, and put away. The trash had been taken out too, and there was a sticky note on the fridge with a small doodle of a heart and the words, "Can we talk later?" Around noon, she came into the room, holding a cup of coffee in both hands like a shield. She sat down slowly, cleared her throat, and said, "I read your letter 3 times. Then her voice cracked, and she started crying. She told me she hadn't realized how much pressure I was under, not because she didn't care, but because she was so buried in her own panic and guilt. She said she felt useless, like a failure, like she was dragging both of us down. Every time she looked at a job posting that didn't match her career, she'd get this knot in her stomach that said, 'You're throwing away everything you worked for.' She said she was ashamed, embarrassed to even think about walking into a place like a store or a cafe and asking for a job, not because she thought she was better than anyone, but because she had imagined her life going a certain way, and now it felt like she had fallen off track with no way back. I told her I understood. I reminded her that I admired her passion and her goals, but I also told her something I've been holding in, that sometimes we have to bend a little before we break. That being strong doesn't mean staying rigid, it means being able to adapt and survive even when things don't go as planned. That we sat in silence for a long time, the kind of silence that doesn't feel awkward, just necessary. Then she asked if I'd help her look at some part-time job openings. Not forever, just something to help share the load while she regains her footing. I could tell it wasn't easy for her to say, but she said it. That mattered more than anything. That night, we cooked dinner together. For the first time in weeks. It wasn't perfect. We bumped into each other, forgot the rice, burned the chicken a little, but we laughed. And after dinner, she rested her head on my shoulder while we watched something on TV, and even though nothing was fixed, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. We still have a long road ahead. She's still struggling, and I still get overwhelmed sometimes. Not the AITA. You asked for shared effort, not a golden goose. You weren't cold, cruel, or careless, just real. Love isn't an all-you-can-eat buffet where one person foots the bill while the other lounges in their robe, binging comfort. Dramas and draining utilities like Thanos snapped half the budget. You didn't demand miracles. You offered compromise. Sure, pride is a spicy meatball, and swallowing it takes time. But relationships are mutual survival missions, not solo campaigns with romantic soundtracks. You kept the lights on, literally. And emotionally, you wrote a letter, for heaven's sake. That's peak tenderness. Oh yeah, you're not the AITA. You're just a guy juggling rent, reality, and raw eggshell feelings, and somehow still choosing compassion over conflict. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell us your favorite story in the comments, and feel free to share your own story too.